think that's everyone. Actually, both groups. So good that you made it all here. So as our keynote speaker for now, we have Helen Lisowski. Some of you have saw Helen a bit earlier on. She did a very good Agile workshop here. But I didn't have a chance to introduce her, so let me do that now. So Helen is really tries great value across multiple companies of all sizes through an amazing set of psychological and behavioral skills. In other words, she drives great habits into other people. She's a real people person, and everyone really loves to work with her. She's a big supporter of the Agile community, and today she's going to give you a talk about the Agile journey. So when I did my notes, I thought, how can I sort of compare that, just to give you an entrance speech? And I found one quote, very, very famous one. It says, happiness is not the destination, it's a journey. So I think in the same way, Agile is not truly something you can really get be done with.
Okay, we've done the talk now.
Thank you. You're not asked for having me talk. Thank you.
That really was a spoiler alert. Can you hear me again? Yeah. That's fine. Don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. Okay, so this is going to be distracting. So you've all been at this conference all day. So have you seen some good talks? Have you seen some talks that made you feel, oh my God, these guys are amazing. This person is amazing. They are way better than me. Okay, that's a thing called imposter syndrome, and it's really true. It's that feeling. It doesn't matter how good you are, how great you are at something, other people will still, no, you're not as good as them, and I have no business being here. Well, I felt like that every day at New Voice Media because we're surrounded by amazing people. So my feeling is I don't want you to leave this conference today and feel that, yeah, New Voice Media is all well and good, but that's not the Agile I know and love. What I'd like you to do is leave here today feeling inspired that actually it may not be the Agile that you know and love, but it's there and your Agile is just as valid. So, I picked the clicker by accident. Do you recognize this? This is lifted directly from the website. Thank you. So, I want to talk to you about how this came to be. There was a group of people who'd never heard of Agile. Agile didn't exist. What they did was they self-organized into a sort of unconference, took themselves off and started talking about how it was they were failing to deliver working software into life. Never mind the quality of working software into life, just getting it out of the door was really impossible. And they met together and they were just sharing stories and sharing ideas. And some of them had been experimenting with other ways of doing things that weren't conventional wisdom at the time. And when they put that together and they started to put the similarities between their stories together, they came up with this. Individuals and interactions seem to work better than processes and tools. Working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, responding to change over following a plan. And what's really interesting is that every time anybody mentions the Agile Manifesto to me, everybody says, there's this or there's this. This is not a binary thing, people. These are ends of a sliding scale. And the idea is that wherever we are on this, even if we are right down here following a plan, a nice waterfall-y Gantt chart, even if we are, our job, our only thing we have to do is slide left along that scale. Slide right. Yeah. That way. Difficult backwards. So, and it doesn't matter where you start. All that matters is your motion and the direction of that motion. So all your job is to be slightly better tomorrow than you were yesterday. Because if you keep doing that, eventually, we're making things better. So, if that's what Agile is, what is this?
Values.
Which values? Do you know? I'll be impressed if you do. XP values.
XP, there is no commitment, so it's not.
So, what's really interesting about these XP values is they are also super agile. We recognize these as agile principles. These are good things. They're not the same as the stuff on the previous slide, but there's a massive overlap, which is great. And what's really interesting is that so far, I have already spoken at this conference previously about how Agile is really just an umbrella under which all sorts of things live. So Scrum, Kanban, XP, all sorts of things live under this. But no one of them is Agile. And we didn't even mention Scrum or Kanban yet. We just talked about the Agile Manifesto and this, which is another interesting thing, because the number of times I am told the Scrum Guide says. Honestly, does it matter what the Scrum Guide says if you're not doing Scrum? Honestly. However, it's nice to know what the Scrum Guide says. But it's not the only answer. So, what I'm trying to say here is that if anybody says to you, this thing isn't Agile, you're doing this wrong, that is not got a place in the way that we speak. We should not be saying this isn't Agile, because pretty much every single person is in a unique environment with a unique set of people at a unique point in time. There is no one true way, because if there was one true way, we would all be doing it, because the evidence would be so overwhelming that we would just do that and it would work everywhere, universally, and it just doesn't. There is no one true way. So, we're going to talk about a journey, and like any journey, there are multiple paths to our destination. And the reason that you need to choose your path is not just based on where you're trying to get to. It also is important that you take into account other factors, and we'll talk about those other factors in a minute. So, let's talk about preparing for our Agile journey. So, I've come to Poland very recently. On Wednesday I came to Poland. I do quite a lot of traveling, and I travel super MVP. Literally, what's the bare minimum I need, and that's all I take. My husband has joined me this week. He does not. He packs everything just in case. There's a bit of conflict there. But there are some essentials that we all need. Well, so when we're going anywhere, we want a destination. We want to know where it is we're going. We want some preparation. So we want guidebooks, maps, those kind of things. We want to do some planning. You know, are we going to take a bus? How are we going to get there? And we want some passports. Maybe if you're coming to somewhere else in the world. So I'm going to go through just those 4 things and kind of relate them back to the Agile journey as an analogy. So let's start with destination. So this is an Agile journey. Destination's got to be Agile, hasn't it? Agility. Let's get to agility. And that's actually, it can't possibly be our destination. And I'd like to explain why before we start. So if you take a moment to think about Agile as a destination, can I ask you, how would you know when you'd get there? When are you done? When have you arrived? You know when you get to Delhi because you're in Delhi. You know when to get to Wrocław. You're in Wrocław. You land at Copernicus Airport, they tell you. But you don't get to agility with a list of requirements. There's no done for getting to agility. I used to think there would be. I used to think that one day I would reach this Agile nirvana and I would recognize it when I saw it. I may not be able to define it, but I would recognize it. And once I saw it, all I would have to do is not touch anything, and we could stay in this Agile sweet spot, and it would be great. And I would just literally keep all those plates spinning, and we'd be good. It'd be great. But it turns out, the more Agile stuff I did, and I've been doing Agile for over a decade now, really, I was one of the really early people, the more Agile I did, the more I realized that there was more to do. And the more I did, there was even more to do. And this is pretty much a difficult thing when you're thinking of it as a destination. You want to do an Agile transformation, you want to transform to be Agile. It's kind of, it means nothing. So I worked out that a better way to describe it was that Agile was the journey. Agile is actually the way in which we travel rather than the place that we're going. So for our thing today, I want to talk about how, for an Agile journey, you're looking to improve things. You're looking to move, to find something that you can make better, to make it better, and then to look for the next thing to make better. And we do this over and over and over again. In any kind of Agile transformation, in all my life, we have found things to make better, and initially they're really easy. You can see, if I could just fix this one thing, everything will be lots better. And you make it better, and then there's another big thing that makes it better, and you make big changes and big gains. And then you go somewhere like New Voice Media, and when I arrived at New Voice Media, I looked around and went, oh my God, how can I possibly make this place better? They already know all the stuff I know. But it turns out that you have to spot harder problems, and you have to work much harder to make smaller improvements. But those smaller improvements still count. So over the years, every single improvement you make still counts. So in the early days, it's much easier, and you can see these lovely big wins, which is great, because that really gives you, when you try hard at something, what you want is a big payoff. So getting a big payoff and going, great, let's try the next thing, is actually quite good for Agile adoption. But the more Agile you get, the harder it is to find those wins. They're still there, but you have to look harder. And it becomes more challenging. But it becomes, if you're used to doing this is fun. This is like, what can we get better now? And of course, it gets better every day. And it still does. We're still fixing things. And we aren't done. We won't ever be done, because, believe me, agility is not a destination in itself. So, do you know what this is? I'm so pleased to be able to use this. It's a fractal. Okay, exactly. And they are a particularly mathematical set, which are modeled to make these beautiful, infinitely repeating patterns. And this only goes on for a few seconds, because frankly, I think people will start to feel a bit sick. And this is, to me, what the Agile journey is really like. You can see from the very beginning, great, there's all this stuff we can do. But as you start doing it, and you're zooming in, there's more stuff that you couldn't see before. And as you get to that and you start fixing that, there's even more stuff that you couldn't see before. And to me, this is absolutely representative of what it's like to work in an Agile way and to keep working in an Agile way. So you progress through finer and finer levels of detail. And I like to think that this is the way that we get to our destination. So when I started writing this talk, I realized, having got this far, we're talking about a journey and we need a destination. The problem is every single person here will have their own personal destination that's right for you, for your company, for your point in time, for the people that you're working with. Your destination is different. But we needed a working destination for today, so I've picked something that I hope is going to be pretty okay for everybody. It should make sense. So this is our destination. We're going to release great quality software our customers really love, and we're going to do it on demand. Okay, does anybody feel that's not a good destination for our Agile journey? It's a good thing. We can measure it when we get there. We can measure the quality of our software. We can work out whether our customers love it. We can work out whether or not we're able to release on demand. It gives us a way to incrementally do better. Our quality can improve. Our customers can love us more, and our releasing can get more frequent. Anybody object? Okay. Interestingly, this is pretty much the destination I was given when I joined New Voice Media. This is pretty much what Ashley and Rob and Darren and everybody gave me when we joined. This is kind of what our goal is. This is what we're aiming for. I thought that was quite cool. So for me, the nice thing about this is the equivalent of traveler's definition of done. We know when we're here. We're not quite here yet, because the ever finer detail means we're not quite here yet, but we're really good. Okay, so let's get to our destination. Preparation. So for me, I talked about guidebooks and maps pretty much. The point of thinking about where you're going to go for your destination is this idea of working out how it's going to differ from where you are now, because then you know what to accept. It's about building your anticipation of where you're going. And the idea that a culture, particularly, might be different where you're going once you get to your destination than it is now, will give you some ideas of where your steps need to be to make that transition to this new way of working. Because if you could do what you wanted to do in your destination now, you would already be doing it. So you need to change some things in order to get that. And there are many, many nice guidebooks already out there. There's the Scrum Guide, which I think I might have mentioned earlier. Everybody mentions. But there's also Lead from the Trenches. There's 1,000 brilliant Agile books out there that will give you guides to all sorts of ways of traveling, and you can take any one of them and learn some stuff. But other things you could do is ask friends, colleagues, have they been there before? If you were going to, I said Delhi earlier, if you were going to India, to Delhi, you would go and find somebody. Have you ever been? What was it like? It's all useful stuff. People who have been before will write a guidebook and they will tell you what it's like. It's quite generic, but it's enough to get you started on your journey. Ultimately, though, the whole point here is to know where you are now so that you can compare it to where you're going to go. And your job for the preparation is to find out what that gap, what that distance pretty much looks like. So, we're talking about guidebooks, and we talked about the idea that it's really handy to talk to somebody who's already been there. Now, whether they're written guidebooks or whether they're verbal guidebooks, we're splitting hairs here, it doesn't matter. The idea is that somebody who has had some experience will share it with you. The better that experience, the closer it will be to what you're doing. So if you've got a friend or a colleague who's been to India, you just want to talk to them, you might pick up a book about India. But if you were going to Delhi, you might want to talk to somebody who's specifically been there, or pick up a guidebook specifically from there. Otherwise, a lot of the information is not really relevant to you. So I like to think of it like this. So imagine you're going on holiday, and you check into your hotel or youth hostel if you're backpacking, and there's a bar next door. So you arrive, you check in, you dump your stuff, you go to the bar next door. And as you walk through the door, you hear people talking in your language. And they're talking about restaurants they went to, museums they saw. And you're like, great, we've just arrived. Can you tell us more about this town, this city? And they will tell you, yes, yesterday we went up the road and we went to this great restaurant. Or they'll say, day before yesterday we were at this great museum, you should go, it's not far. And because they are super local, they're right here, right where you are, and they're talking about things they've done really, really recently, that makes their information more valuable than the guidebook for a colleague who once went to somewhere on the same continent. So, when I'm talking about guidebooks, I'm talking about getting advice, hearing stories, hearing experience from other people. But this is really cool, is that 3 days later, you're in the same bar, and two people walk in, and they hear you talking, and they recognize the language, and they come in and they say, brilliant, you've been here for a couple of days. Where do we eat? Where do we visit? So, although you've only been there for 3 days, you are still more experienced in being a travel guide than they are. So there might be the same people as you spoke to a couple of days ago sitting further down the bar, but that doesn't mean that your experience is not as valuable to them as the other people's was to you when you arrived. So you are your own, you need other people to be your guides, and you need to be other people's guides, because your experience every step of the way is really relevant to people who are even earlier on that journey. Okay, I want to talk about very briefly here about if somebody were to approach you in that bar and say, hey, I hear you're speaking Polish and you've been here for a while. Can you help me? Can you tell me where to go? How do you want to receive that information? When you asked for help originally, how did you want to receive that information? You wanted people to be open and welcoming and friendly. Yeah, sure. I'm quite happy to spend a few minutes telling you a little bit. We've got a dinner reservation shortly, but we've got 10 minutes, we'll have a chat. So no matter what your limitation is, it's still about being open when somebody approaches you and being kind to their need when they approach you. And I want you to bear that in mind as we get further down, because the way in which somebody asks for help and the way in which you respond to that, or the way in which somebody responds to you when you ask for help is really important. We all know the value of a good map. But there's a guy called Alfred Gorzycki. I can't pronounce that. Is that good? That's not bad. Yeah. Is it? Okay. He said the map is not the territory. The word is not the thing. And it's true. So when we look at a map, they don't show us all the things. Even if you get Google Maps and you zoom right down, it's still not all the things. even with the pictures, it's still what it was 2 years ago when they took the photo. So when we do maps, what we have is enough to tell us we're on the right track. A few landmarks and we know where we're going. So we often start on an Agile journey. So here's our destination that we were talking about earlier. And we'll start on an Agile journey and we'll say, this is the route we're going to take. And there are many reasons, as I said, that we would take a route. Just like the fractal though, you can't see all the stuff you need to see to make those judgments well, just yet. But we'll cover it all again in a little while. What you need to do is look at your map from this high level and say, where are we now? Where do we want to go? What is the right route for us? And when you're choosing your path, I mean, here you can see this path has been chosen. It's quite a long route. Quite a long route. And the reason that somebody's chosen this particular Agile path is maybe that we've got lots of people who want to take along with us. So we don't want steep paths. We don't want cliff edge drops. We don't want really narrow paths and difficult to navigate. We want everybody to come with us. So we need to take a path that's gentle, allows everybody to get comfortable, to walk with us and to come on that route with us. We do not want the shortcut, scrambling through the brambles, up the steep slope. That's for only a few very resilient people. Now maybe we could relook at this map and go, do you know what, actually, let's not sail into the castle. Let's go over to here. We can scrabble up this bank here and we'll get to this much faster. And you would get there much faster. And if it doesn't matter about bringing the rest of the company with you, that's absolutely fine. You will have a few people, maybe one token team, who make it up there and can then maybe bring the rest of the people with them because they can see a better route. When you're making a decision about which route you take, it's not just about how do I get there and how do I get there quickly. It's about who else do we need to bring. Interestingly, shortcuts very rarely discovered by the newbie traveler by accident. Almost always, shortcuts are shown to you by somebody who's already been there. So when I say, look at your Scrum guides, and when I say, read Lean from the trenches, there's a good reason for that. Some people have already got you some shortcuts, and that's what the frameworks are. The frameworks are things that work a lot of the time for a lot of cases. It won't always work, it won't always be appropriate for you, but they are shortcuts. Choose your shortcuts based on whether or not it's going to get you where you want to be, and everybody that you need to take with you. So, getting there, making plans. So this is your decision to work in an Agile way. This is the way we're going to travel. We're going to travel in an Agile way. And it doesn't matter where the destination is, we're going to make an Agile. We're going to do it, and we're going to choose an Agile framework as our mode of transport. So you can look at the Scrum bus, you can look at the Kanban car, you can look at the rapid application development yacht, the safe train. Yeah, the joke's getting any better. But I could keep it up all day. The framework we choose depends on how we want to get to our destination as well. So if you remember that fractal, we're looking at just the first layer. We're not going deeper and deeper and deeper. We can only make a decision on the stuff that we can see right now. So you make a decision on your framework right now for what suits you right now. It doesn't mean that that's always going to work, but it means it's right for the first milestone that you can see, probably. This is the mode of transport I've chosen. It's an Agile scooter. I used it using some word art thing that my daughter, who's 12, showed me. I loved it. As you can see from it, I have randomly collected a whole load of values that I thought were important. I did not pick and choose. I did not think about it. I just put them together. The reason I did this is because I really, really wanted to make a point, which is you can make Agile up in any way if it works for you. So long as you inspect and adapt, you work out what works for you and you change what doesn't, and you are constantly getting better tomorrow than you were yesterday, it's okay. So long as you're better tomorrow than you were yesterday, you are making progress in the right direction. And that's good, because you're heading for a destination. What works for your company today with the people you have is more critical than anything else. So that context trilogy is more important than what the Scrum Guide says, what the Kanban masters say, What works for you is more important than what the rules are for any of them. So, interestingly, as a reality check, if anyone can do anything, why the hell are there so many rules? There are lots of rules. Which rules do you apply? Well, it's quite hard to change human behavior. So if I give you an example, can you put your hands up if you've ever set a New Year's resolution? Ever? Okay, leave your hand up. You put your hand down, should I say, if there was ever a New Year's resolution that you didn't do. So you put your hand down if you've ever had a New Year's resolution you haven't done. And that's why there are rules. So if you're going to do Scrum, there are rules for Scrum. If you're going to do Kanban, there are rules for Kanban. And the reason there are rules is because humans are rubbish at changing their behavior. So we have rules that help us adopt our new behavior until it becomes our new habits. So remember those shortcuts? We've got Scrum, we've got Kanban. Those are shortcuts. Those frameworks are shortcuts. We borrow somebody else's experience that looks like it's going to fit us on our map, and we say, Scrum looks good. There are 4 ceremonies in Scrum. There is a huge amount of psychology wrapped up in those 4 ceremonies. And honest to God, it's a really good starting point if you are new looking to go in a new Agile way. If you add into that some XP practices, you're looking like a pretty Agile organization. It's a good set. It's not the only way. Maybe you want to do, if you're a big company who's been using waterfall forever, maybe something like SAFe is much better because the management team can understand this better. It does what it needs to do. Maybe less is right. Maybe Kanban's right. It's about what's right for you and your team at the time. But it's the way we work that makes us Agile, not the framework or the methodology we use. So when we zoom back out to our map, anybody spot how our Agile scooter's going to fare on our journey? Yeah, there's a lot of water, and I don't know about you, but the Agile scooter did not look like it floats. And this is a really good analogy for why people switch frameworks halfway through an Agile transformation, or later in the day, or they adapt something. And you'll hear people say, oh yeah, they do Scrum but. Don't ever say that with a sneer. Scrum but is fine, if it works for you. Inspect and adapt, make it better. Don't just stop doing things because you don't want to. But honest to God, our Agile scooter is not going to float here. We would need a rapid application development yacht here. So it's about finding what's right for you and changing. Never be wedded to something so much that you can't make a change. That's my face. Okay, the last thing on our list is passports. So passports are those documents that let you in to places that have borders. Now, don't get me wrong, I fully understand the irony of being an English person knee-deep in Brexit saying, actually, no borders, people, no borders. There is far too much elitism in tech as it is. I was joking with some guys earlier about why is one language better than another? Why would you exclude somebody who wants your help just because they have learned something using a different language than you? Why would you say, you don't do Kanban, you do Scrum, so therefore your Agile is not as good as my Agile? And it's really easy because what happens is you learn some Agile stuff, and I've been there, I've done this, I learned Scrum, and I was like, Scrum is awesome. And so you tell everyone how awesome Scrum is, and suddenly the Scrum community say, that's brilliant. We really accept you into our tribe. You really are a Scrum person. And suddenly I'm tricked into being a gatekeeper. Is their Scrum good enough? Should we let them in or not? They do Kanban, they're not one of us. And how is that fair? Because do you know what? Kanban is really cool. Kanban works really well for some contexts, for some people, and for some points in time. So everything works somewhere, even waterfall, okay? Even waterfall will work somewhere. So the problem to be solved is far more important than the label that we put on it, the framework that we choose to get us started, or the adaptations we make later. If you are not solving a problem, you are not doing Agile at all. And I did say, there were no rules. If anybody's seen me speak before, you'll have heard me say I'm not really good with rules. Rules are so black and white. There's no room for wriggle, and I like to be able to say, yeah, sometimes it's not always right. So every unique Agile journey is exactly that, unique. So rules are really difficult. So you saw I had pirate treasure map earlier. I tend to subscribe to the pirate's idea of rules as well. They should be more guidelines. So mostly, this is how I think you should approach Agile working. These are rules of engagement, guidelines for engagement, really. Make the world a better place tomorrow than it was yesterday. And this is exactly how Arta introduced Ashley earlier. Ashley is here, despite the fact he's just sold his baby of 17 years or however long it is, but he's here because he wants to make the world a better place tomorrow than it was yesterday. This is a really lovely sentiment. Use inclusive language. Nothing is better than anything else unless you really are certain of the context and the people and the company. Reach out and share what you know with fellow travelers. Your experience, even if you have a tiny bit of experience, is more experience than some have. And on that journey, we don't turn around and throw rocks at the people coming up the path behind us. We should be going and literally pulling them along, showing them the shortcuts, helping them, cheering them on if that's all they need. Reach out and ask for help. So we're on that journey too. There are people who are further ahead on their journey than us, and they will help us. When you help someone else, you learn. So whether you are further ahead or further behind, both parties helping each other will learn. And finally, I've stolen this from developers because I loved this. For years, I've known about this Boy Scout rule, which is every time you go into the code, if it's a mess, if there's something missing, if it needs refactoring, don't just mark it and move on. Go in, spend the time, make it better, within reason. Obviously, you don't gold plate anything up, ever, just saying. What I'm saying here is leave your community better, and you do need to form a community. You need to be part of the community. So in my mind, the only rules for being Agile are this. This is all you need to be Agile. You need curiosity and a willingness to experiment. When you're experimenting, you do need to be able to understand whether or not your experiments have worked, and preferably pick the ones that work. But that should see you right. There is nothing more to being Agile, but there are frameworks, there are ways of helping, there are communities out there who will help you find shortcuts. And because fractals have never ever fitted in a talk of mine before, I probably never will again, I wanted to do it again. So there is some argument and disagreement about how fractals should be defined. But Mandelbrot, the guy who's known for his fractal, this is a quote from him. He says, they're beautiful, damned hard, and increasingly difficult, increasingly useful. And to be honest, I think that's a really good definition of Agile as well. It is beautiful when you see it working, and when it's better and you've done something better. It is really, really hard, but it is increasingly useful, because the more we do, like Ash's talk this morning, the more we do, the more complex our environments, the more we need to be able to adapt. So now I want you to go feel good about making your own path. Try and be better tomorrow than you were yesterday, and solve the particular problems that you find. On behalf of New Voice Media, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Helen. So this is almost the end of today's day. I'll give it up some words to Archer to wrap it all up.
This is a challenge here to wrap it up in 90 seconds. I'll let you do it.
I didn't know you were going to do that.
I'll give it a try because I don't want people rushing out. But first of all, I wanted to thank the organizers and the people who put hard work and a lot of effort into preparing the organization of this event. So thank you very much. Also, all the presenters, because I know you guys, and some of you are geeks, and it's been a lot of work that you put on your own time, but also kind of you had to take up the challenge and present in front of people. I know it's not easy, so it's double efforts. I'm very proud of you, and I also wanted to thank everyone who believed in us and wanted to join this conference and come here and spend the weekend. And you thought it's worth enough to spend the time with us and listen what we have to share. So thanks everyone, and also by coming you supported a great cause with the hospice. So a double thanks to everyone. Thank you. Before I let you go, I wanted to remind everyone that the same team that has been preparing this, we have a less formal meetups that happen every month. So if you want to continue the discussions, see, because we're changing and evolving all the time, there's under the same name, Wrocław Agile Development, you can find us on, there's a fan page on Facebook. So you'll see what's going to be presenting, what are the topics. So just look it up and go there. And now I think I can let everyone go to the bar.
Survey.
Huh? Oh yes, and please fill the survey because we want to make the world a better place, including this event. And the next door there is a bar set up. So please join and continue exchanging thoughts, giving us feedback, sharing our experiences, and doing some networking. And enjoy. Thank you.